You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain haulers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Lindsay today. Lindsay is currently a bank executive, also a listener of the show from out there in Colorado. And she's got some interesting things to share today that she's experienced over the years. But welcome to the show, Lindsay. How are you doing?
Oh, very good. Thank you for having me on. I do listen to your show. I've been listening to it for quite a while, and I think it's probably the one show that I find to be credible. And I do, go out of my way to listen to it over TV shows or any Bigfoot stuff. Your show is the one that sticks out to me as the number one show out there.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I do appreciate that, and I appreciate you listening, of course, and learning all the. It's a lot to learn. I learn from it every day. Right. But Lindsay, we're going to be talking about a few different areas today, I think. But you've got a certain way that you want to present the information. So I feel it'd be great if I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to you, and feel free to take us back to the beginning of your story of where we want to start today.
Sure. I live right in northern Colorado, which is right outside the canyon to Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Forest. I live like 2 miles from Highway 34, and that 34 road goes all the way up to Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Forest. If you're familiar with the area, for a better part of my life, I'd say a good 25 years, probably even a little more than that. It's called Mariana Butte, and this is a golf course that is right on the outside of that canyon that goes up 34, and it's on the foothills there. And again, I've been going there for years, and as we progress, and I call them woke, and as we progress through our experience of life, for the people that are woke or whatever, we start to see things and notice things differently than people that it's just an everyday experience to them. So I pull up to the golf course a few years back after I moved away for a few years, and then I came back, but I've been here most of my life. So I pull up, and there is a statue of these three Indians, and I just found it online where your viewers can go look at it. It's an Indian statue. One is an Indian, an old man holding a feather and some type of a round thing with a like a cross in it. Not a cross, but like an X per se. And then the other one is a little girl pointing, and then the lady on the end is holding a rock. And an average person probably wouldn't think twice about that. And when I saw that, I was like, after I became woke to the Bigfoot arena, you could say, I looked at that and I said, that is pointing right up to Rocky Mountain National Forest and to Long's Peak. Long's Peak is right there in that area where all these missing people are. People pop up missing up there all the time, and they never find them. They're just gone. And very strange, weird. Every year people are missing and weird things happening up there. And if you research it or listen to Dave Paulides, he used to live over in northern Colorado. But that pointing thing, it stuck out to me. And I've been golfing over there over all those years. Well, I had a concussion for several months and I couldn't golf all summer. So I thought, now I'm feeling better. Let me go golfing. I go out there, and this is again hugs the mountain there, and the very close to that canyon. And I go down the first fairway, and I'm driving the cart by myself. I kind of golf by myself, so I started to go, and I looked down, and I saw a rock stack on top of a tree stump. And I said to myself, oh, that's just some kids or some people put that there, and then that doesn't mean anything. And then I just kept going to the next fairway, and I thought about it and thought about it. So when I got home that night, I looked up rock stacks, and I know all about these rock stacks are tied to Bigfoot. I'm already privy to that. So I said, there's something weird about that. Why do I think that's Bigfoot? Because it's not in town, it's on the foothills there. Town is further away. And I was like, go look up rock stacks on top of tree stumps. And then I found it. There it was. All these different photos of in the mountains where these rock stacks are standing on top of the tree stump. And I thought, and I also thought, those rocks are heavy. Why would someone, there's no rocks like that around here. It's a golf course, and there's a bunch of houses all around the golf courses. There's no big bouldery rocks like that. And I was like, that stood out to me. Why would somebody go to the trouble of lifting this heavy rock? It wasn't like a little mini stack where a little kid or somebody just stack up some rocks. It was a big boulder at the bottom of it. And so I left, and I went back a week later. Someone knocked that rock stack down, and which is very strange. I was almost afraid to tell you this. A few days ago, I think it was Friday, that I live, a good 15 miles from that area, but I live out in the country though. I don't live in town. I live out in the country. And I kind of park in the same area, for example, for 5 years. I come out there and I pulled my car up and I looked and I went, what is that rock stack doing there? Somebody had taken these rocks and made a line out of them. And I said, where are those rocks from? These big, heavy rocks. And this whole area it's like a hill, and it's cut off, like nobody goes up there. It's just like this mini hill. And the other side of that is a golf course, by the way. This is kind of weird. So I went in, I said, this is really weird. So I went in and I asked the manager, she's a friend of mine. I go, hey, Rebecca, what's that rock thing out there? Where did you guys hire someone to mow? Or it's wintertime now. They're not mowing anymore in Colorado. Winter started a couple weeks ago. So she goes, I don't know what that is, but the city owns half of it, we own half of it, and it just kind of sits there dormant. And I said, I've never seen the lawnmower men up there. She goes, no, they don't go up there. I said, what's that big rock stack thing out there? She goes, I don't know, but that's been there. It started 2 weeks ago, and every day I come in and park and come to work, somebody adds a rock. Like every day there's a new rock. I said, you don't know who's doing it. Those are big, heavy boulders. They're heavy. They're not little. She goes, no, I don't know what's going on over there. And I just thought to myself, that seems incredibly strange. That is my story for the rock stack.
I have a question about the rock stack real quick.
Yeah.
Were these rocks where, let's say normal sized human being, well, or human of any size, would they have been able to stack these rocks, do you think, or were they much, much bigger?
No, to me, I could physically pick them up if I wanted to, but I would say those rocks are probably, like, if you tried to lift them, they're probably 50 pounds.
Wow.
The bottom one was a big boulder. So it's like, I'm not trying to sound weird, but the average human out there, they're golfing, they live out there, they're a little pretentious. They're not going to lift these big, heavy thing and stick it out there. there's no boulders. Like, it's a pristine neighborhood, pristine golf course. And I was like, where did those rocks come from? Where did those boulders come from? So down on the other side there is a riverbed. So yeah, there's a riverbed, and it's not close. It's on the other side of the fairways, or that area that I'm was at. There is another side down there on the other side of the back fairways, like 9 through 18. There's a river. Yeah, I'm sure those rocks probably came from over there, but an average Joe isn't going to pick up a rock, in my opinion, a big heavy one, stick it on their golf cart and toot over there. And the key to me, I wouldn't even be on the phone with you when I found out that a lot of this Bigfoot stuff is on these tree stumps. That's right there. I was like, they put them on tree stumps. Why do they do that? And I thought, you ought to call Jeremiah, contact him, and see if he'll do a show about these. First, they have these rock stamp stacks. They have where they make long lines of rocks, like the ones that are in front of my car, and then they make these teepee things that are made out of logs and trees, and they make these teepee looking things. They bend the trees. And the other one is they make these big X's. I've seen a lot of that in the Bigfoot stuff. So they're communicating, and I don't know what their communication means, though. Stay out of my area. This is my zone. Or I have no idea what this stuff means. But if you were standing, this is another interesting thing. If you were standing at the three Indians, the Indian girl is pointing to Estes Park, to Rocky Mountain National Forest, right? And the rock stack is in the exact, if you took a ruler and measured it, a straight line, that's probably a better way of putting it, a straight line, that rock stack is on the line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was like, whoa, that's just creepy as, and then I was walking around looking on the ground for do you see any footprints? And the ground, the rock, we have had a very dry summer, very dry. And that rock, that dirt is super dry over there. It's like super dry. So that's, when you're like, did you see any footprints or any kind of anything like that? So I just thought it was all not normal.
It is very weird, and it's one of those things, like, I'm not sure how I feel about it yet, but I will tell you I've also experienced weird rock stack stuff. It doesn't really come up a lot on the show, but like I can one in particular I can share with you. This happened actually this year in July when I was out in the Mount Hood National Forest. And we're way, way out in the woods, extremely far out in the woods. And we find this area, this muddy area. And me and the gentleman that I'm with, researcher in the area, he's showing me where he's spent about 30 years researching. We find a handprint, a 10-inch across handprint in the mud. And we find it's almost like a weird tool station because there's ferns that are picked and then stacked, alternating. There's piles of mud. There's about a half a foot long piece of bark that had been torn off a tree and then was upside down with mud on top of it. But then around this area, there's these piles of rocks. Now, these ones were smaller rocks, but it was so far out that is just the weird thing. But I've also, another example of a weird rock thing is in Oak Ridge. We go up to this meadow, and there's a stump in the middle of a meadow. And I mean, it's the stump height is probably is about 4.5, 5 feet off the ground. And there's this rock on it that is massive. I mean, it's at least 50, 60 pounds. It's like something would have had to just bear hug it, and just throw it up there. It's been up there now for 2 years. And so
Wow.
I think those are just things that I've experienced. Personally, I've heard other stories where people are out in the woods, they find a huge boulder that's on top of two arched trees that's holding it down. And so there's other examples of like potential Bigfoot interactions with weird large rocks. And I mean, that's not even to mention sometimes they're taking large rocks and throwing it at people too, right?
Right, right. And that's the Indian holding the rock back to the area, the Mariana Butte. There is a lady Indian holding a boulder in her hand. And then the little girl's pointing to the area of Rocky Mountain National Forest. And then the other one is the Indian with the weird X and his like a jewelry thing he's holding. And yeah, that throwing rocks at people. Like, why would they put an Indian up there holding a rock, like a big rock? I was like, that just all just says Bigfoot. You know?
It's very interesting. I wonder if there's some story behind it. Maybe somebody knows, or maybe I found a picture of it. It is a very cool picture, so I'll make sure, you know, people can check that out too.
See it?
But it is cool. Yeah, definitely holding what looks to be a rock for sure. And then the other individual is holding like a feather. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if people want to take the time to look up Rocky Mountain National Forest, Estes Park, Longs Peak, right up there, all these people are missing all the time. Sometimes they find them. Sometimes they never find them. They're gone without a trace. And when I first moved back here, I just gotten back here within a couple weeks, a very short amount of time. So his name was Josh Hall. He was up there in this area that we're talking about, and he just popped up. And I was here when this was actually live happening. So he came up missing. And of course, you know that they're pretty good in Colorado, especially. It is a touristy place. And they sent people up there to search for him. The search teams were up there. They've got pretty good, in my opinion, they've got good search teams in Colorado in particular because of the tourism and all that. But anyway, he in the mountains and all this, but he was gone for months without a trace. The area had been searched over and over. And then that summer, he came up missing in like October, and then summertime, months had gone by, and then he popped up. But the weird part, they found him. And then the weird part about that story too is he had a dog was with him. His dog was named Lucky, is off my memory. And the dog was found up there, you know, the Estes Park, Rocky Mountain Forest, up on a road up there, and 20 miles away within days of Josh being missing. And then they found his dog miles and miles away. And I was like, oh, that dog went through a portal. That's all that went through my mind. I said, that dog went through a portal, end of story. And then he got separated from Josh. But there is a lot of, like I said, if people take the time to look, they're missing. There's a lot of normal people go up there and they fall, and it's very dangerous. At Longs Peak, up there right outside of Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Forest, those are very dangerous areas. I understand there's going to be a certain amount of people that didn't have proper equipment. There's signs everywhere how dangerous it is. I understand that part, that there's going to be a statistical amount of people that are going to fall or different things. But then there's the missing and gone, like Josh. Gone for months. The area has been looked at over and over and over. Very strange events happening up there all the time. This area is also the famous little boy Jared, and Paulides did one of his movies. I think it was his first Missing 411. He had the little boy Jared. This is what got me all involved in all this, because that wasn't far from Fort Collins. So I had a house over there for 18 years. And Jared was like 3 years old. And these people told his dad, they lived up in the mountains. He owned like a convenience store way up there, the Pooter Canyon. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to take Jared and your little girl we're going to go over to this fishery thing. And then they did that. And then they all decided without getting his permission to take the little boy up a trail. And they took him up a trail 3 years old, and he was just straddling with people. He didn't have one person looking out for him. And all of a sudden, Jared's missing, gone without a trace. And that's what got me involved in hours and hours of researching what happened to Jared. And none of the stories made sense. And then that's what made me get highly involved in the Bigfoot thing. That's one of the reasons. And then I, for a short time, lived in Missouri. I lived out in the woods in Missouri for like a year. And I never believed in Bigfoot. I really didn't believe in Bigfoot. And I always thought Jared had been taken by a person, or those people, were not honest about what happened with the little boy. I never believed Bigfoot got little Jared the whole time. 20 years went by. But then when I lived in Kansas City, it wasn't the city, it was the outskirt there of the woods there, which was on the state line of Kansas, by the way, out in the woods. Then I started having all these Bigfoot experiences. I didn't even believe in Bigfoot. These experiences were happening, and I was oblivious. I had no idea what was going on. And then one day the sun was going down, and my friend was in the backyard, and the neighbor was kind of out on the porch. It was summery time, and we heard this giant growl, and it echoed like it was this major noise, and it echoed like you couldn't believe the sound of, and it was scary, and we didn't know what it was. And then we came in the house, the sun went down, we came in the house, and my friend was like, yeah, let me go look that up. So she's like, I go, oh, it's probably an animal, it's nothing, no big deal, it's probably an animal. She came in the house, she goes to those people in Canada that recorded the exact same noise, and she's like, come here, listen to this. And it was a Bigfoot. And after that, then I started piecing together all the weird, like the tree knocking. There would be a knock, like in the middle of the day, I'd sit out there and kind of work or take breaks from my job. And then I'd hear tree knocking, real loud. And then I'd hear a branch break. And then the human mind goes, oh, that was a deer. I always see deer back there. That was a deer. I mean, you do not rationalize what it is. I had no idea until the growling event happened. And then another time I'm up on a porch on the second level of this backside of the house. And there was a neighbor next door to the left of me. And this dog in the middle of the day, went up to the fence and was staring at something, and nothing was there. And this is back when I'm still pretty clueless about the Bigfoot in the woods back there. And so the dog had his tail bent, and he was just not wagging his tail. He had his tail bent and just staring at something. I was like, I knew his name at the time. I forgot his name now, but I was like, are you okay? What are you looking at? And there's nothing there. And those are some of the things that happened. Then another time I was looking at Bigfoot noises and stuff like that. And then there were these people there out in the woods, and like, this is a Bigfoot noise. And it sounded like where they would, these wooden things, and you'd rub a stick on it, it would make a noise. I don't know if you're talking about.
Yeah, yep.
But yeah, and it sounded like that. And so these people like, this is Bigfoot, and we're scared, we're going back home. I was like, what's that weird noise? So I go outside one afternoon, and there's, within days of watching that video, this is really creepy. So I start hearing, and I've been there I lived at this house for a year. I'd never heard that noise before until I heard it on the YouTube. So I hear it, and then I'm living with my friend and her husband. They're train engineers. They're never home. So anyway, Spencer comes home one day, and I said, hey, do you know what this noise is? Because he grew up there in Missouri. I said, do you know what this noise is? He goes, and he hunts and everything. I said, do you know what that is? He goes, no, I don't know what that noise is. I go, it's in the backyard, dude. I don't know what that is. I've never heard it in my life. And I was like, just weird stuff like that would happen. And I guess I can say that after that, I believed in Bigfoot. And then the neighbor next door, when the growling thing happened, I said, Chris, do you know what that noise is? He goes, oh, it's there's a neighborhood on the way back side of these woods. It's probably a dog. There's a dog back there named Lucy. And I said, huh. I just was like, that wasn't a dog, but if it makes him happy. So about a week later, this dog, this Malamute, was lost. And Chris and I are trying to catch it. It's the dog named Lucy. Chris and I are, hanging out there trying to get Lucy. Next thing you know, the lady walking around the neighborhood looking for a dog. I go, are you looking for your dog, Lucy? She goes, yeah. I said, Chris, how's your dog? We just got your dog a few minutes ago. She goes, oh, thanks. I go, can I ask you a weird question? This is really creepy. This is so creepy. I go, we heard this giant growl last Sunday about 4:30. The sun was going down. Did you hear that weird echoing, loud, roaring growl? She goes, no. I said, well, Chris said it was your dog. She goes, that wasn't my dog. I go, I know that, but I just, it's so weird because me and my roommate here think it's Bigfoot. And she stopped and she goes, do you want me to tell you a story? And I go, well, yeah. What's the story? She goes, we've lived back here. That when they built that neighborhood back there, we were one of the first houses back there. This was all nothing, no houses or nothing. I said, yeah, okay. She goes, well, my kids were like 3 and 4 years old. They were really little. They used to go outside and play all the time. Woohoo, and I said, yeah. And she goes, one day the boys came in. She had 2 boys, like 3 or 4 little. They come in, they said, Mommy, we're not going outside anymore by ourselves. And she said, why? And they said, because Bigfoot's out there and he wants to get us. I said, what do they know about Bigfoot? Did they see a movie or something? She goes, no, they never saw any movies about Bigfoot. But from that time until they were fully grown, even age 10, 12, she goes, they would never go out there by themselves. They were that petrified of this so-called Bigfoot. And I was like, wow. And then I would say about a year ago, I went back out there to visit my friends because I moved to Colorado. And my friends called me and like, hey, guess what one of the neighbors has over here? I go, I don't know. They said they made a Bigfoot statue. It's like 12 foot tall. It's in their front yard. I go, why? I said, I thought you didn't believe in Bigfoot. I thought there wasn't any Bigfoots in your woods over there. And they go, I don't know, but they made a Bigfoot statue. So when I went to visit, there it was in the front yard. And I really time was tight for me, but I would have loved to knock on the door and go, why do you have a Bigfoot in your front yard over here? There's got to be more stories in those neighborhoods,
Oh,
but it's out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's secluded. You're out in the dang woods out there, and it's by a state line, there's a river that goes through there and all that. And Dave Pilates likes to talk about there's always rivers and water nearby. So like that Mariana Butte golf course, like I said, on the other side, the backside of that golf course, yeah, the river comes down from the canyon and goes through there. There is a river over there.
So was this north of Kansas City then?
It was like, I think there's a little town called Parksville. Yeah, it was if you're on the northwest side of the city,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be a good 40-minute drive to get to the city. You're out in the woods over there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really interesting because that is definitely, northwest of Kansas City on the border. Missouri River's right there, like you were saying.
Yes.
Yep. And definitely north of Kansas City, I've had tons of reports. There's even a place. Let's see where it is. It's called Monkey Mountain. That's north of Kansas City too.
There's a lot of sightings when I did my Bigfoot look. There's certain people that made a sightings report thing, and I went in there and looked at that, and there was a lot of, and on the other side of that river over there, so now you're in the state of Kansas, and there was a police officer that did a report. He goes, "Yep, I was over here, and I'm a police officer or sheriff, whatever the heck," and he was like on the other side of that river and had a Bigfoot report that he filed.
Oh, so he got the report, or it happened to him?
He made the report.
Oh, he made it.
It happened to him. It happened to him.
Okay. Gotcha. But you did move back to Colorado recently, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I moved back here about 5 years ago.
Back in Colorado, have you become involved with trying to look into places out there that there have been lots of sightings, or try to do any research out there?
I do research and stuff from my computer, but to go out and thump around out there, I don't know how to say this, but I'm like, I used to be an avid hiker and go hiking out in the middle of nowhere. When I was a kid, like when I was 21 years old, I lived in Boulder, and I'd go out in the middle of nowhere and up in those areas that I was just telling you about, the Rocky Mountain National Forest. I would go out in the middle of nowhere by myself all the time. And I didn't have anything to protect me, like, if someone attacked me, a human or a bear or whatever. And I wasn't afraid of Bigfoot. Now I'm like, I'm not going up in the mountains by myself. I'm going to be with people. I have no desire. That's how freakishly weird I am about Bigfoot. It's creepy to have to feel that way, because I'm like, no, I don't want to be around any areas that Bigfoot's going to mess with me. There's a lot of sightings around here, especially up that canyon. There's a lot of sightings. Just a few months back, there was a lady in Longmont that, again, this hugs the mountain, right? So that back road goes to Boulder. It hugs the mountains. And this lady said it was late at night and she saw a Bigfoot. And so, I just think that these things are like all over the place, where I don't have any desire to go hiking. But if I go hiking, I'll only go in areas that are full of people, or I won't go. I know that sounds weird, or sounds kind of crazy to say. I'm afraid of Bigfoot. I don't want to bump into him.
Well, I think it makes sense.
But I know it's real.
If you're especially, well versed in like missing 411 cases, especially ones around you, and if you think, Bigfoot is probably responsible for a lot of those, I can definitely understand the way that you feel about that. Do you have any ideas about any certain thoughts about what you think Bigfoot is?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked that, because I've had so many hours of research of Bigfoot and stories and just connecting the dots. I believe Bigfoot, and I just saw the trailer of Dave Pilates has a new movie coming out on December 1st. And right before your call, you and I got on the phone, I was like, let me look at Dave's thing. But Dave started talking about this subject that you're talking about. And I believe that Bigfoot has technology that humans are not aware of. Like, they have some type of a equipment. I believe it's equipment, and they have this equipment that can make them invisible. And that was on his trailer, by the way, just a few minutes ago I saw. But I do believe they're interdimensional creatures, and I do believe they are I believe in some weird way, whatever you want to call it, I believe they're a form of a demonic type of I see a lot of people make videos and stuff about Bigfoot, and he's nice, and he's he's our friend and they're misunderstood creatures. I don't feel that way about Bigfoot at all. I feel that when I heard that growl or roar, whatever you want to call it, that would make, your hair stand up on the back of your neck. I did not feel like, oh, I love Bigfoot. Let me drop him a box of gifts. There's people that give him gifts and they're like, please don't eat me. Here's a gift. But I feel like it's a demonic kind of a thing. It's to me, and it's able to go through dimensions and stuff. And I do believe in portals. And I do believe that a lot of these missing people just go through these, they grab them and they take them through these portals and they are just vanished. Do I feel like the government conspiracy stuff? I would say anything's possible, but do I feel like they have a purpose out there? Yeah, I believe they have some type of a purpose. They're real, and there's not a few. I believe they're all over the world, and there's thousands of them.
Oh, absolutely.
And all these weird missing people stories. And do I believe that they kind of can communicate to each other like on a demonic, interdimensional level? Because I'm over in Missouri, I had that weird experiences. I feel like in some way, they do kind of follow people. I've seen, there was some lady, she was being terrorized. She left the state, packed up, and went to a completely different state, and she was being terrorized again. It was like almost like a ghost that follows these people in some of those ghost stories, or the demon follows the person. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but they're being followed.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I think there's like two, I feel like in the community right now, there's at least two different ways to look at that. One is like the hitchhiker effect, where you go into an area and then something follows you home and then you're trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say right now is that you go to an area that is really charged up and very active, and then that kind of unlocks something in you so that you're able, when you're anywhere, things are more aware that you're around, or there are, it's Dr. Simeon Hine explains it a whole lot better, and I need to go and listen to my own interview with him a few more times. But it is very strange. There's another way definitely to look at the whole hitchhiker effect, and I don't know if there's a right answer quite yet. But do you have any, when you were talking about portals and things like that, do you have any good examples of situations that involve portals that come to mind?
I personally don't, but I just, in all my research, I believe these portal things, like when that little boy Jared came up missing, they said that in Colorado Springs, which is miles away, southern Colorado, that a man had a little boy walking, that people described that little kid as Jared. They're like, oh, that's the little boy that was missing. And it happened at the same time missing. So that would deem a normal person, that would be impossible. But if he was taken through a portal, you know what I'm trying to say? Jared be in Colorado Springs if he went through a portal. So I believe in those portals, like that dog Lucky, all that weird stuff. And even that little boy Jared's dad is on record, on video, saying, I did hours and hours of research on Jared, and there was a guy that approached him and said, hey, I independently want to help you. And he goes, yeah, there's something not right about this, covering something up, and I can't put my finger on it, with the city or the people that were involved with trying to help him find Jared. And he didn't feel good about the way that whole search was conducted and everything. So this guy came to him independently. He said, I'm going to go look. Do you have some clothes or something that has a scent? I'm going to go up there myself. And this was after they took the barricades down, because nobody was allowed to go up there. And that upset his dad as well. And so guy goes up there and goes down the trail. The dog is going, down the trail, smells Jared. And then poof, he gets up to a ridge or like a hill, a rock hill, a big hill that Jared could never climb. He's 3 years old. And he said the very strange thing was, and this is back when I thought humans took him, get up to the thing the dog did. And he goes, this is like 20, 30 foot high up. Jared could never have gone up there. And that's where the dog stopped. And he goes, I don't know what to think of this. So that as time progressed, these hikers went up there way up and found Jared's clothes, turned inside out, and then found some bones. But the guy goes, I don't even know if these are my son. I don't even know if this is real. He goes, I don't know about that. And the interesting thing about these portals that I'm hell-bent on, the movie The Terminator, when they went through one of my friends was one of the creators of Terminator, the digital side of things, and they put the, the Terminator 1 or the Terminator 2 or Kyle, if you watch any of this series, they would go through the portal and they would go through naked because the clothes wouldn't stay on them.
Right.
So a lot of people find their clothes not on them. They find their shoes and their clothes. And when they find their clothes turned inside out because they went through the portal, their clothes just whipped off. I don't know a good word, whipped off. And they go through the portal. Yeah, it's just very, very interesting. And then there was a lady that was up that same canyon. She filed a Bigfoot report. The same thing that the police officer in Kansas did. She was up there and she said they heard a baby crying. And they're like, what? I heard baby crying. They're up there. They're in a little log cabin rental thing. And they go up. And her husband goes, oh, my back is really killing me. I'm just going to sit here. And she goes up. And there's a Bigfoot up there, and she keeps hearing a baby crying. She goes up there, and she said she got pinged by this electronic thing that hits your ear, and it makes you lose it just makes you lose your familiar, or what am I looking for? Your bearing, your bearings on where you are.
Equilibrium or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, so... Yeah, so she's talking to him on a walkie-talkie thing, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know where you are. Something happened," and so he started beating rocks together, and she found her husband, and they got out of there. Well, I hear a lot of weird stories about. Again, I take the demonic approach, where it sounds like a woman is saying, help me, or a baby's crying. And you stop and go, why did that person leave the trail? Because I'm a hiker. You stay on the trail. Why would you not stay on the trail? It's just the first question. Why would you not stay on the trail? Or you leave the trail for 2 minutes and take a picture over there by the little river and you come back to the trail. I think people are, going down these trails and they hear a woman or a baby crying, help me, and they leave the trail and then poof, they're gone. And another thing that Pilates talks about all the time is they're usually isolated people. They're people that are alone. They're usually not in groups. Yeah, people have popped up at the back of the, they're going and the guy at the back is gone. They're all together and the person in the back. But I think they're more isolated where they can grab, the child or the person, and children are easy targets because they're little. You can just grab them, poof, they're gone. And I wanted to say before I forget that Davlov's Pass, I spent hours and hours and hours researching that. It was, I maybe I should have gone to this. That's how many hours I poured into that story. And they were up there and before all that incident happened to them, they had pictures of a rock stack. And then they taken pictures, and they had a picture of a Bigfoot in the thing. And then when I was watching, I was like, how do you know that's fake, or that's, I don't even know if that's Bigfoot, but it's supposed to be Bigfoot. He looks like a Bigfoot. And I was always so skeptical. And then those people just popped up. They're no longer, there was a massive something bad happened when they were in their tents. If you know Davla's story.
Right.
Do you know that story?
Yep.
Yeah, and that ties into this part of that story. About 1,000 miles away from that location were these people up in the mountains, and all were up like at the top of the mountain. All of a sudden, something happened where they're no longer with us. And there was one lady, or she was a young girl, in her teenage years. She wasn't little, but say teenager, 20. The guy grabbed her and threw her, and he goes, "Stay still, don't move, don't move, don't move, just go over there and don't move." And she's the only one that made it. And that was a super huge cover up, that story right there. And that all leads into another story I heard the other day. Several years back, I started watching the Bigfoot, it's like Bigfoot Colorado, and he had a picture of his friend sitting on the log. So this lady said they were out in the middle of the woods, out in the middle of nowhere, and that she saw this white Bigfoot. It was white. And in my mind, I was like, I think those are the leaders of the clan, those white ones. And so she said they stayed the night, and she was afraid. She didn't want to be there, but the hike was really far. They were out in the middle of nowhere. And she said she got in her sleeping bag, and her other two friends, there was a little group of them, saw this thing turn into a ghosty thing, and went and that same white Bigfoot and entered her body. They saw this. And she said then she was trying to, go over to a cliff, and she lost her mind, like on the cliff, and they grabbed her and stopped her from falling off the cliff. And I was like, this just all goes in my mind. I'm like, God, this just goes right back to Davla's past, where those people were psycho scared, and they were like clawing on this is all documented, they were clawing on the trees to get up and out and away from something. And they left all their shoes at the tent. They took a knife from the inside of the tent and cut their way out to get off that area really quick. And I mean, all hell broke out. And the government was like hushed it up. And then this is just like 3 to 4 years ago. This is really creepy. So while I'm watching this, doing my research and spending hours and hours and hours, doing this, there was a group of people this is all within weeks of me doing that. And I can remember it was like, oh, look at the calendar. This all happened to Davla's past right around the time that I was doing the researchy weird stuff, right? So there was a group of kids, college kids is my best memory, went up there to do a memorial for that, and they disappeared to this day. Gone. It's
Really?
pretty weird, isn't it?
That's extremely weird.
Yeah, go do some research on it. Yeah, gone. When the first batch of kids popped up, the first incident of Davla's past, all the people went bananas. They were all getting together. What happened to them? They were all upset. And I mean, to me, the government, I really hate to use that word on here. And this is like Russia or whatever. These kids disappeared without a trace. And that was it. Hush, hush, hush. Don't talk about this. Where'd they go? This is just a few years ago. And it was around the Memorial Date is why they went up there. They were doing this little Memorial Date thing. And I just remember the pictures of the rock stacks. And I was like, when I saw that rock stack, I swear I wouldn't have even called you. But I was like, there's something ain't right about that. I wonder if they put these rock stacks on top of tree stumps. And when it was on the tree stump, poof, I found it all over the internet. I was like, oh, I got to call Jeremiah. There's way more bad stuff than they want people to know about the Bigfoot thing. He's not our friend. I literally am looking to move to a new place. And I'm like, well, whatever you do, don't live out in the country. And what the irony was, I was looking at houses out there in Mariana Butte. I was like, I might want to live out there. And I said, if you had a house and you were living out there and you saw that rock stack, what would happen? Day 2, house for sale, loading up my stuff, getting the heck out of there. I would have never lived there.
It's
So I
one
would
of
have-
those subjects where there's so many ways to look at it. There's so much information. You could dive into it forever. But I'm just curious, have you been out to the Sasquatch Outpost in Bailey at all?
No, what is that?
Oh, it's pretty much like the Bigfoot Museum / gift shop for Colorado in Bailey. You should check it out.
Wow.
Yeah,
No,
I think you
I
would
didn't
really
know.
dig
It's
it.
in Bailey,
Yeah.
Colorado.
Bailey,
Okay.
Colorado, yeah.
Okay.
You are Captain Dick Tracy. You show up and you're like, you fly. I was telling my friends about you last night. I was like, you fly all over the United States. You go in and you meet with people, and there you are, And I think you're like, especially the younger crowd or the millennials, they want people like you. They don't want to read books. I don't know how to say this in a politically correct way. They want to see movies. They want to see streamlines where Dave's got his great movies going, which is great. But I feel like you're more younger and you're on it and you show up. And I feel like you are really more millennial material. I think you're at a whole different angle. And I can't stand to watch the Bigfoot TV shows. They're dumber than, they're just stupid. There's a Bigfoot show. We're going to go out in the woods in the dark and call out to him, and we're going to make whooping noises. Nobody wants to watch that. They want to hear real live encounters like what you do. Is you're out there beating the bush, meeting people that have had experiences.
I appreciate the kind
But
words,
that's
and
just me.
that's kind of what I'm going for when I go out there. Is I try to go to places where I can talk to people, get their story, and give them a place to talk. And sometimes you have to go like out to Oregon, or next year I'm going to Oklahoma, Oregon next year. So going to places.
Right.
So it'll be
Nice.
pretty sweet. There'll be a lot of chances to hopefully talk to some people. So looking forward to it. And, hopefully you'll be hearing those on the podcast next year as well.
I think real quick. The other thing I think real quick is there's a lot of people that have had crazy Bigfoot stories, but they are afraid to come out in public. And I was like listening to Dave Fleiss thing. I was like, I think these are interdimensional creatures, and I think they're demons. And then when I was listening to his trailer right before I started talking to you, to Jeremiah, because people think you're crazy. And I was like, why? It was just on David Pilates' show that these people, he was saying they think they're interdimensional creatures. He was defining what people think they are. Some people think they are, some people think they're not. But, there's a lot of people that are afraid, and they're not going to come on a show and talk, because especially a live show where people can interact with them and attack them and who knows what. But people don't want people to think they're crazy, and they don't want to get on here and feel threatened, or they think they're crazy. And I'll end it with my last thing to say.
Roseanne Barr said this several years ago. She goes, "We're living in an age and a time," and she's very bright. I really think she's very bright. She said, "We're living in a time where super intelligent people are called crazy. People deem them as crazy." And she goes, "And the people that are calling them crazy are the dumbest people on earth." And she like, I'm paraphrasing, but she's just basically saying that people that are super intelligent and all that are deemed as crazy. And that's been throughout history, right? All throughout history, when people would discover things or learn things and know things, the other people are like, "You're crazy."
Oh, absolutely. It goes against the status quo, as we kind of alluded to a few times already. And eventually people realize, what's actually true and what actually isn't. So I think that's a great way to wrap things up. But, Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing what you've experienced. But we also had a great chat about some things that we might not talk a lot about on the show, but I think it's good we talked about them. And I'd say if people listening have examples of stories that, have to do with portals, maybe people experiencing portals and then telling the story, definitely share those down in the comments. Would love to look into those. But thank you so much for coming on the show today. I appreciate it, Lindsay.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and being such a gentleman. And I really love your show. And again, I think it's the top show out there. And I would say your show is the top show to me. And then the next show would be Dave Pilates. And then TV and all that other stuff. I never watch that stuff. But I know your show has the capability. If you ever had a TV show, I think it would do good.
Yeah, I turned it down. I'm not going to. That's another story, but it's not really what I'm wanting to do. But I appreciate you hanging out. And this has been a good chat. Before we wrap this episode, I want to say something directly to a very specific group of listeners. If you're in the military, any branch or forces, and if you've seen something that no one can explain, or if you're a national park ranger or forestry worker who's been told to stay quiet, or if you're a pilot who's seen something strange down on the ground, or if you're with the FBI, a federal agency, or working intelligence, and you stumbled upon something you're not allowed to talk about, and if you're a firefighter, paramedic, or search and rescue responder who's heard screams or found tracks that didn't make sense, if you're in the logging industry, on a remote oil field, or a trucker with government contracts, and you've had something happen that you've never told a soul, and if you're a biologist, a wildlife specialist, or a field researcher under contract who has found evidence you're not allowed to report, if you're a pastor, a missionary, or someone on a spiritual retreat, and you saw something that shook your faith, or if you work in the shadows, CIA, NSA, or anything with clearance, and you've seen what the public hasn't, then I want to talk to you. Even if it's anonymous, you can reach me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. The world needs to hear what you've been forced to carry alone, and you're not alone. You've got the story. We've got the mic. See you in the woods. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, Trust your gut and never stop asking what else might be out there, and see you in the woods.